All right. Well, we're going to get going. So thank you to those who threw some gratitudes and things into the chat box. And in fact, Judy, if you're still there and available, I think it'd be cool if you would throw into the chat box how many appointments you guys set yesterday in the prospecting school. So we've got the prospecting school going on right now with ESS here at the Union Park office. And for yesterday, and they're going to be making calls again today. And so I'd just be curious to know if you are available and able to do it, Judy, to throw in just how many appointments were you guys able to set yesterday in the calls that you were making. So anyway, while she's maybe doing that or maybe not, just a couple of things. I have mentioned for the last couple of weeks that we're going to get going on doing live morning ascents. And I had mentioned last Thursday that we were going to start this week. And then I went into a meeting a half an hour after we got done with morning ascent, and it got pushed to next week. So the plan as of right now, and I don't think it'll change this time, but is we are going to start doing them live in the offices. So rather than me doing it from my laptop here in the training room, we're going to have it get people here in the room. So the plan on that is Monday, Wednesday, and Friday will be live from within, broadcasting from one of the offices, and it'll, hopefully be George and John and me and, just some of the people who you're typically used to seeing doing that, but doing it with people live here in the offices. Tuesdays and Thursdays then will be done at each of your individual offices, and the managers at each of the offices doing it. So the idea of this is we want to get people back in the offices, back to more of a normal morning ascent of what we have done for years and years and years. So like I say, Monday, Wednesday, Friday still would be awesome if you would go into your office for the morning ascents, but if not, you can watch online. So now also for you guys that are in California, the way that's going to work. So we're going to have two different broadcasts that we will do of that. So the one will be 8 o'clock Mountain Time, and then at 8 a.m. Pacific Time, we will have John doing the majority of those down in California, so that you guys can do it more at an 8 o'clock time, so that then you getting on the phone and making phone calls by 9 o'clock. So anyway, something to look forward to and plan for next week. So for you guys that are part of the Union Park office, plan on being here in the office Monday morning. And I'm not sure that I know who's doing it yet Monday morning next week, but I know it's not me because I'm going to be out of town. So anyway, all right. So just kind of plan for that. And then also for the Union Park agents, there's a base camp tomorrow that Jeremy Laguerre is going to be doing in person here at the office at 11 as well. So, all right. Now with all that put aside, let's get talking about what I wanted to share with you guys today. So here's what I thought I would talk about is I thought it would be helpful, and I think it's always good to do a reminder from time to time of what your responsibility is or what your role as an agent is. Now, as you have heard us talk about, and if you're newer or haven't been with the company very long or haven't participated in these very often, then you may not be as aware of this, but your number one job in terms of being an agent is about leadership. And as part of that leadership, then the number one skill that an agent or a leader uses is communication. Okay. Now, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about the leadership part or the communication piece, but what I want to get to is basically what your role or your responsibility is. So obviously it's to be a leader, and the number one skill is through communication, but great. So in terms of the communication, what's kind of the next level down then from that? If our job is leadership and then communication, okay, communicating in what way? And so there's 5 things that I want to talk to you about today in terms of your role and your responsibility as an agent. So the first one is actually just one of the questions, I guess, that I would say that I have for you today is, in the last week, how many people did you talk to in terms of real estate? Now, I'm not necessarily expecting an answer, meaning like if somebody wanted to throw one in the chat box, I guess that, how many people you talk to would be fine if you wanted to do that. But how many people did you talk to in the last week? Because number one thing in terms of your roles or your responsibilities as an agent is you need to be prospecting and slash, I guess, lead follow-up. So I guess ultimately that's where I would say is think about that your job or your responsibility is to be prospecting slash doing lead follow-up, which lead follow-up is part of the prospecting. And I'm amazed how many agents will spend time prospecting, but then they actually don't do any of the lead follow-up. And believe me, I say that, and I'm guilty of it myself. I have had many, many times that I've written on a sticky note or a piece of paper or a napkin out at a restaurant, somebody's information. I go back to my office and I put it on my desk, and there it sits for who knows how long until I ever called them back, if I ever did. So your job is to be prospecting and doing lead follow-up. Well, I asked the question of how many people did you talk to in the last week? And here's what I would say is, if we tie this back now to our 12 steps to the summit of success, we say that you should be talking to 30 people a day or 150 people a week. So if you are talking to less than 30 people a day or 150 people a week, or maybe even saying it this way, if you're doing less than 15 hours of prospecting in a week, are you really doing your job, is what I would ask you to answer for yourself. Is, have you done your job if you don't talk to 30 people a day or 150 people a week, 3 hours per day or 15 hours a week of prospecting? Anything less than that, and you're not going to be achieving the type of income that most likely you came into real estate for. I don't know about you guys, but when I got my license, what, 25, 26, something like that years ago, I didn't come into real estate just to replace my income. I came into real estate because I wanted to make a lot of money, and I wanted to make way more money than I was at my previous job. Well, that is going to be tied directly to, are you prospecting and doing your lead follow-up? Now, when we say that, that would include talking to for sale by owners or your sphere of influence or expired listings, door knocking, just listed, just sold. Like any of those things are fine. You figure out what you want to do. Now, according to the NAR survey and according to everything that you guys probably already know as well, you've got to be talking to people in your SOI. So of those 30 people per day that you're talking to, 5 of them should be within your sphere of influence, at least 5 people. And I'm sitting here looking at the participants list of who's online, and I see Brenda Lee Jones. And I know, in fact, maybe you'll throw it in the chat box, Brenda Lee, how many people from your SOI do you talk to every day? Because she does a lot of business, and she does a lot of business from her sphere of influence. So how many people are you talking to from your sphere of influence every day? So your number one role or responsibility is you got to prospect and do lead follow-up, and make sure that you are including in that people from your sphere of influence. All right, number 2. Next, after we have prospected and done our lead follow-up, the purpose being of setting appointments, right, is the next thing that should happen then is we should be out presenting to buyers and sellers. So number 1 role or responsibility is that we should be prospecting, doing lead follow-up. And Brenda Lee just threw in there, thank you, that she talks to between 20 and 25 people a day. Hey, not bad. And she does a very good business. So if you want to be like her, you need to be talking to that many people as well. All right, so prospecting, the idea being to setting appointments. Once we have done that, then number 2 is we need to be doing presentations to listings or to sellers or to buyers. So how many presentations did you do last week as part of your job? Now, again, you don't necessarily need to answer that question, but how many people did you present to last week? And if you're not doing multiple presentations in a week, I would say it's probably tied to the amount of prospecting and the number of contacts and appointments that you are setting. So we need to become master presenters, is part of what I guess I'm saying. Part of what your job is to present and to become a master presenter. Prospecting will become easier for you as you become a better presenter. Most people I see are hesitant to prospect because they don't feel like they're very good at presenting. I don't know what I'm going to say if I go get an appointment to meet with the people. So, and as part of that presenting, I would be curious as well, if we were in a one-on-one scenario coaching, I would be asking you, of those presentations that you go on, what percentage of those turn into a contract signed, whether it's a buyer broker sign or a listing agreement signed? What percentage of the presentations that you go on end up having a contract signed at the end of that presentation? All right, so number one, prospect and lead follow-up. Number two, presenting to buyers and sellers. Number three, then, hopefully we have now gotten them to sign a contract. So our third role or responsibility then as an agent is to negotiate contracts. So the third thing of our responsibility is negotiating. Here's the thing. Most agents think they are really good negotiators. And I will tell you, in my time of having my license, what I have noticed is the skill level of agents in terms of their negotiating skills has gotten worse over time. And what I mean by that is when I first started, it was not uncommon. And in fact, it happened pretty much every time. It was rare not to happen that when you would present an offer, the buyer's agent would show up either at the office or the seller's home to actually present the offer, to be able to give it to them in such a way that as to help the sellers emotionally connect with wanting to accept our offer. And in fact, it was not uncommon for us to show up and on the time frame of how long the offer was good for, would usually say agents would put in there a lot of times upon acceptance, meaning we would have the buyer sitting in the car as I went inside the seller's house, presented their offer, then would leave the house. The seller and the listing agent would talk about what they wanted to do. They would write up a counter offer or accept the offer or reject it, I guess, although I never had that happen. But they would do a counter offer. The listing agent would walk out to my car. I would get out of the car. He would tell me what they were doing. I would get back in the car, sit and talk with the buyer, and we would either do another counter offer or accept their counter offer. We would negotiate though and put the deals together right then. Versus today, I am amazed at how many times an agent doesn't even bother to call before they send over. The idea of today in terms of negotiating is I send an email and half the time they don't even give you a text message to tell you I sent you an offer. So how good are you at negotiating, I guess? And do you need to spend some time working on and becoming a better negotiator? Now, I got to tell you a funny story real quick on this. So I have a 12-year-old son, and my wife for Christmas decided that part of his Christmas every year is she was going to buy passes to Lagoon. Now, for you guys that are in California, Lagoon would be like Six Flags or a Magic Mountain, something like that. But in Utah, it's just called Lagoon. It's the local theme park or amusement park. And so my wife bought him a season pass. Well, the other day they went for the first time to go to Lagoon, and it was hot. And so my 12-year-old son, my wife gave him $1 and said, you know, he wanted to go buy a cup of water. So he went over to one of the concession stands and he says to the lady, I want to buy a cup of water. Well, so he comes back to my wife, and when he gets back to my wife, he says, I am such a good negotiator. And my wife says, oh, really? So like, tell me, what do you mean? And he said, well, I went up there and I asked the lady, how much is it for a cup of water? And she said, well, for a small cup of water, which was a 16-ounce cup, she said, it's 25 cents. And he goes, and he said, see, this is what he's telling my wife. I told the lady at the concession stand, I'll make you a deal. If you give me a large cup, I will give you $1. And the lady said, okay. So she took his $1, gave him the large cup, and went back. And he's now telling my wife how good of a negotiator was. Well, the small cup was 16 ounces of water. The large cup was like 20 or 22 ounces. So instead of paying a quarter for 16 ounces, he paid $1 for 22 ounces. That's how good of a negotiator he was. So he's ready to become a real estate agent and be a negotiator the way that a lot of agents are negotiating. So we've had to have a discussion about how good of a negotiator he really is because, you know, anyway, you get it. All right. So read some books on negotiating, study on it. At the end of the day, negotiating is really just about you asking questions. how good are you at asking questions? Because really what's going on is, if I stop and think about it for me as a consumer, if I am a buyer, what ends up typically happening is as I'm meeting with people, and I can think about specifically when I've bought a car. I have had times when I've walked onto the car lot and dealt with the salesperson who turns into very salesy mode. And I tell my wife, we are not going to deal with this guy. I don't like him. Versus the times when you get in there and somebody is asking you questions and finding out more information and just probing and asking those type of questions, are the ones who usually you start to feel like, okay, I like this person. And it's because they are concerned of wanting to know what is important. So the way that you're going to be a good negotiator, and part of this role or responsibility you have as an agent in terms of negotiating, is asking a lot of questions, finding out what's important to them. If you can find out what is important to them, then you can then present back to them how you're going to meet those needs. All right, so number one, prospect, lead follow-up. Number two, present to buyers and sellers. And then number three is negotiating. So your third role is negotiating. Number four, which isn't as crucial in today's market, but it's coming, guys, and that is price reductions. How good are you at getting price reductions? Part of your role and your responsibility as an agent when you list a property is you're going to need price reductions. As hard as we try, one of the things, I had an agent that some of you in Utah may or may not have known. His name was Bob Larson. Bob has since passed away, but as a new agent, Bob was so awesome in terms of helping me to learn things. So for example, this doesn't have anything to do with the price reductions, but one of the things he taught me was he would at an open house put a little placard up that said, the person who thought about this home last night is going to buy it today, meaning because that's an excuse that a lot of times people want to give to you is we need to think about it overnight. So he would say to people, this home will sell today to the person who thought about it last night. Those type of things is what I learned from him. Well, one of the other things that I learned from him in terms of price reductions is you can never outguess the market, meaning you can do a market analysis and you can do your very best to coming up with a price, but you are going to have times where you put it on and you think it's priced too high and you're going to get multiple offers and it sells. You're also going to have scenarios where you put a property on the market at a price that you think is awesome and it should get multiple offers, and then it doesn't. You'll never outguess the market, meaning the market is what it is, and the people who are out there looking are going to be the ones to define that. So how good are you at setting that up? Part of the process of that is you need to be talking with your sellers every single week. Talk to your sellers every single week is how you're going to be able to earn the right to get those price reductions. And we are going to see the inventory start to increase, which a little bit it is. We're still way low, but as it starts to increase, sellers are going to still be living in this fantasy that prices are going to continue to go up forever. They're not. And you're going to have sellers saying, well, let's put it at this high price. And as a result, the property is not going to sell and you're going to need to be able to get price reductions. So number four is price reductions. And then number five is working with highly qualified buyers is one of your responsibilities that you have, is getting highly qualified buyers. Now, when I say highly qualified buyers, that doesn't necessarily mean just with Inspiro or with a lender, although that is a piece of it. Part of highly qualified means that they will follow your rules. See, you should have what your definition is of what a buyer is, of who you're willing to work with, and the amount of time and effort that you will spend putting into those people. And if somebody doesn't meet that criteria, your standard, then what you should do is change that or refer that out to someone else to be able to work with them. All right, so here's the thing. So we've got identified these 5 roles. If you have no buyers that you're working with, you have no properties listed that need to do price reductions. Therefore, you don't have any contracts that need to be negotiating either, and you don't have anyone to be presenting to. Your job then is to be spent in prospecting. If you will spend 80% of your time doing those 5 things, prospecting and lead follow-up, presenting, negotiating contracts, getting price reductions, and working with highly qualified buyers. If you would spend 80% of your time doing those 5 things, you will see success in this business. And just back into it. If I have nobody to buyers to work with, I have no prices to reduce, I've got no contracts to negotiate, no presentations, then I should be spending my time 80% of it prospecting. So if you're not doing that, today's the day to decide, I am going to start doing it. All right. Hopefully you got some good information out of that. Just a good reminder of what your responsibility is and your role as an agent. Go out and make it an awesome day. Let's wrap it up with our closing affirmations and go out and set a ton of appointments today, and then let me know about it. All right, here we go.